Cool. We're live. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Welcome to the IDP Ask the Expert webinar. My name is Don Oliver, and I'm talking to you from Melbourne in Australia. But today we have a very special guest who is talking to you from Vietnam in Ho Chi Minh City. You may have tuned in last November to another one of these Ask the Expert sessions. And you may remember that we talked to an interesting young man from Jakarta in Indonesia. His name was William. And he had studied in Australia. And he was talking about the role that IELTS had played in the development of his career and his own personal development. Today, we have Cao Bach from Vietnam, and anyone who is in Vietnam and listening to my pronunciation, my apologies. But this is a different story. Bach has a very interesting story. He is the head instructor of a school in Ho Chi Minh City, which is called Simple English. And he will talk to you about how he approached his IELTS tests. And he has done 2 IELTS tests, and he has achieved an overall band score of 8. So that means that he is an expert in English, but also an expert in study and in teaching English. So I'm hoping today that you will find some very important advice, some very useful advice, and wherever you are listening to us, and however you're listening to us, perhaps on Zoom or via Facebook, remember that at the end of Bach's short talk, we will open the channels for a discussion. So please put your questions into the question box on your platform, and we will answer as many of those questions as we possibly can in the time. All right, well, without any further comment from me, I'm going to pass it over to Bach. Over to you.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Don Oliver. Hello, everyone. My name is Cao Bach. I'm from Vietnam, but you can just call me Bach. Okay. So as Don has introduced me, I took the IELTS test twice. Once in 2015 and one in 12th of December 2019, just last year. Well, 2 years ago now that we're in 2021. And I have got the IELTS score of 8, overall band score of 8 in both tests. And up until this point, I have been teaching English for 7 years for all ages. And recently, I have put a lot of effort, a lot of focus on IELTS, both on studying it as a part of learning a language, and how to be successful when taking the test. And as many of you know, the IELTS test is a huge thing. It's very important if you want to apply for university, if you want to study abroad, or you want to have a citizenship in different countries, maybe in Australia, for example. And so I would like to share, all that I know. Feel free to ask any question, put them in a question box, and maybe, raise your hand, voice your question, and we'll be glad to share our combined experience with you. And it's an honor to be here with IDP and with Don to represent, the learners in my country, in my nation, and help everyone become better learner, become better English users, and be successful in the IELTS test. Thank you very much. So, John, may you take over. Don, you need to unmute yourself.
Thanks very much, Beck. So can you tell us a little bit about your what you're doing now and your method of learning English?
Oh yes, definitely. I'm an English teacher. Or more specifically, I'm an IELTS instructor at my own English center in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And my classes focus primarily, mostly on the 6.5 band score because it is a very achievable, very feasible band score for most students. And aside from teaching, I also do a lot of writing, sharing my knowledge on how to take the IELTS test, how to plan the study. I make videos to share the knowledge on my YouTube channel, and I'm also on TikTok. And actually, TikTok is a platform that brought me to IDP, that gave me the exposure, that got me into contact with IDP, and eventually here to this webinar. And
I believe, Beck, you have an example of your study schedule that you'd like to share with us. Is that correct?
oh yes, definitely. So first of all, let's talk about how did I take the IELTS test. So the one I took in 2015 was a paper-based, and the one I took in 2019 was computer delivered. And I must, first of all, I must say that the computer one is by far my favorite. So my first tip of the day is that I would advise everyone to, try the computer delivered test. The results will get to you faster, and the layout, the interface of the test is more comprehensive. It is easier for the test taker. You don't have to look at a paper, and it is easier for you to avoid mistakes like you forget a question. Okay, so the computer test is lovely on that part. And my absolute favorite feature in a computer test is word count feature when you do the writing. That's one is my absolute favorite, so you don't miss the word limit. One of the questions that I think we received was that how do I need to practice the skill? So I would like to share with you guys an example of the method and the schedule that I myself used to practice my IELTS, to prepare for my IELTS test. So would you please, I will share the screen right now.
Yeah, please do.
Yes. And here we are. So this is my schedule. So it's going from Monday to Sunday for 2 weeks, and you can just repeat and repeat. So my first tip is that you should um, put the skill. You should spread the skills evenly. Okay, you should not just do all listening all weeks. You get tired, you get bored. Okay, so you do listening one day and you do reading the next, and there should be a break in between, so you can recover. You have time to absorb what you have learned, and so you can relax. Okay, it should not be too intense. You have a burnout. I tried and it burned me out. So Monday, Tuesday, listening, reading. Okay, Wednesday you may take a break. Repeat with listening and reading on Thursday and Friday, and on Saturday, have a productive writing, and on Sunday it should be a break. And you can repeat for the next week, and you can replace writing with speaking. And what do you do? What do you do in a day? So first of all, I would highly recommend that you practice with a practice test. Okay, IELTS is a fabulous book for you with really nice, well-designed tests that you can try. Uh, and when you take a break, when you take a break, it doesn't mean that you don't do anything. You sleep all day, and that's not very good. Okay, so when you take a break, you try to input English in a more fun, in a more um, you know, yeah, let's just say fun way. Maybe listen to some videos about topics that you like. Okay, read a book, read a novel, maybe that help you become interested, help you get better at language overall. And when you do the writing, I would suggest that you base your writing on the actual topics of the IELTS writing test. And one of my recommendation is that you should have an expert, maybe a teacher, an instructor, or maybe an examiner, maybe a former examiner, or maybe an expert like Don, to read through your essay, okay, and give you feedbacks, okay, because if you just write and that's it, then you will not know uh, what are your mistakes, and you won't be able to improve. Okay, it is similar with speaking. I would recommend that you practice your speaking with a native speaker and native teacher, okay, or a certified instructor like I am. Okay, so that's my study schedule and tips on how to practice our the IELTS various IELTS skill in a week, and I think that that could be helpful for everyone. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen now. Okay, back to you, Don.
Thanks a lot, Back. That's very interesting that you are suggesting that you mix up the way in which you study for IELTS. You talk about studying one skill in one day. During that day, is it, do you just focus on reading, for example, or just focus on writing for one whole day, or do you mix up the skills during that day?
Oh yes. So it's not like for the whole day. I'm sorry, I did mention this. So the time frame for studying should be about 1 to 2 hours a day. That is,
Yeah.
the optimal amount of time that you should put into practicing that one skill.
And do you devote the same? Do you devote a particular time of the day to your study? Do you study in the morning or in the evening or when?
Oh yes, I would highly recommend that you have a fixed time of the day. That you think would work best for you. For example,
Mm,
for me, I usually do my work in the evening.
mm,
So I would incorporate my learning in the evening because that's when my brain is working.
yeah.
But for some of you, you're brighter. You learn faster in the morning. Do it in the morning and make sure they're fixed time.
And do you have any advice about particular topics that might be useful for people to focus on?
Oh yes. So the topics for reading can be, yeah, there's so many, but I will go on with writing and speaking. Okay, because a lot of my learners ask me that what are some of the topics we could,
Mm,
the examiner could potentially ask us during the speaking
mm,
and writing. So
mm,
you can see here. So a few common topics. Sorry. Okay. So first of all, in the speaking, I think this one John can attest that first of all, the examiner will always ask you about your occupation. Are you working or are you studying? And based on your answer, depend on your answer. Okay. The examiner will choose a set of questions that is suitable for you. So certainly, when you say I'm a student, they cannot ask you what company you're working for. Okay, and when you're working, they'll ask questions about, okay, so what do you like about your job and things like
mm,
that. And home is a particularly common one. So during my 2 times taking tests, I have had some form of questions about home. So in 2015, I got asked about my hometown. And in 2019, the examiner asked about where was I living? Was I living in a house or in an apartment? And about my what was my hometown, if I remember correctly. Places, transportation, and weather. So these are like basic, common, everyday questions that you can have during the part one of the speaking test. I remember specifically that I got asked a lot about weather. My examiner asked me that what was the weather in my hometown. Do you like it? Do you think you're better with hot or cold weather? Do you think you're adaptable when you're moving to another place with different weather? It was kind of memorable for me. Hobby and leisure. So this one my students encounter. What do you like to do? Your favorite sports? Um, how do you like to hang out with your friends? What do you do with your family in your free time? And similar questions. People. Now this one you might see in part two. So recently, one of my students, just 2 days ago, one of my students got the question of describe an energetic person that you know. And 2 weeks earlier, they got describe a person that you think is interesting. And personally, I got describe a person that you think who has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. So I think the IELTS test is kind of favoring people these days. And health and lifestyle. This one is also, you could also see, so what do you like to eat? How do you like to exercise? What is your favorite time of the day? Things like that. So these are some of the questions that you might have. Of course, there's so many more. Yeah, but these are the ones that, yeah.
Yeah, that's very true, back because IELTS will always try and vary them as much as possible. But talking about the speaking test, one thing that's very important is that these topics are trialed for a long time before they are actually included in the test. So there will never be a topic which is too hard to talk about. So that's you shouldn't. I don't think anyone should be afraid of topics in the speaking test because they are all suitable for everybody, really. You were talking about part one and work and study and home and weather and things like that. There's another question which is always asked in part one, and it's quite a difficult question. It's why. So
oh yes,
you will answer. Oh yes, well yeah, I studied marketing. Why? I like my bedroom. Why? Now I think that it's an important thing to practice answering that question. Would you agree?
Yes, I absolutely agree. Actually, now that you mentioned it, I remember that I got asked why a lot. I think partly because because the examiner wants to get the learner, the test taker, to show what they really know about the ideas and showcase their English ability.
Yeah, and that's something that you can practice. You can always ask yourself, why do I like that restaurant? Why do I like this food? Why do I like that color? And if you do that, then you are really preparing very thoroughly for the speaking test.
Yes.
Another point I'd pick up on when you were talking about part two topics, describe an energetic person, for example, or an interesting person. I'd remind everybody that you choose who that person is. So again, you should not be too afraid of that. You might want to talk about somebody who is not well known, just somebody who is, maybe your father or mother or your brother or something, and that should be quite easy to talk about. But again, you have to practice that.
Yes, absolutely. I often encourage, I usually encourage my students, it's not about who you choose. It's about what you talk about, okay? About that person, stay on the topic. You don't have to, introduce a famous person. You just need to talk about just one person that you like, okay, and make sure that you have ideas about a person to share and stay on topic. Yes.
Go on. Can I ask you a question about the 1 minute preparation for part 2?
Yes. Yes.
Are you confident about making good notes for that part of the speaking test?
It is a skill that need practice also. A lot of people think that 1 minute, something that too much time. What should I do with it? And something to 1 minute. What can I do in 1 minute? It's too little time. So it's a skill that need practice. And my advice, and honestly, I was not good at making notes in 1 minute.
Yeah.
I
go on.
Yes, it's okay.
I always recommend that people practice this because it can make part 2 much easier. And if you write down just 10 words, not sentences, just 10 words, and you're able to speak, for 15 seconds about each word, then you easily reach 2 minutes. And the other thing is that if the examiner stops you, that's good. That means that you have reached 2 minutes and the examiner has to go on to the next part of the test. So you shouldn't be worried if the examiner stops you in the middle of a sentence, because that means that you are doing very well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So a lot of my learners, they say that they panic when the examiner stop them, because, when you stop someone, it's been stop, something's wrong. Yeah. So they panic, and the fear carries out over to the next part.
Well, that's important to tell them not to panic, because it's a good sign. So if the examiner stops you at any time in part 1, part 2, or part 3, that's very good, because it means you are fluent, you are giving a lot of language, and the examiner has to move on to the next topic.
I see. So yeah, a lot of my learners, they ask that when the examiner is asking, increasingly harder questions, or they're asking way more questions than usual, is that a good sign or is that a bad sign?
Well, I think it's overall, generally, it's a good sign. Lee, have we finished with your PowerPoint presentation there?
Yes, I'll close it.
And we might go to some questions that have come in, and I've made a note of some of them, and I think together we might be able to answer some of them satisfactorily. Let me just scroll up to the top. We have, here we go. That one is about booking. Oh, yes. Well, the first question here on this list is from Karen, and she wants to know, what tips are there that you can share for getting an 8? Now, I know you've already given some tips about having a study schedule, determining what topics you want to study, but let me say something about 8 at the moment. 8 is a very strong speaker of English. And that means that you make very few grammatical errors, and you are also able to use very natural English words. And so I would always say, Karen, that you should be very careful of grammar, are and the, tenses, use of prepositions, for example, and read as much as you can, because then you will learn how to use English words naturally. Would you add anything to that, Beck?
Yes. So an 8 in speaking and writing, is that right, John? In which skill? 8 overall, or 8?
Think so.
8 overall?
Well, I suppose 8 overall, yeah, in all skills.
Yeah. So So this is, I would like add a little more that if you want 8 overall, you can get a little bit tactical about your test. Okay, so you would, I would highly recommend that you max out your listening and reading, because they are the easier skill to get the high score. Okay, and you can aim for about maybe 7.5 on your speaking and writing. Okay, you get 8 overall pretty easily with that. But getting 9 in writing, in listening and reading is by no means easy. I only got that once. But also, if you want 8 in specific skill, I would agree with Don. So first of all, make sure that your speaking and writing is absolutely clear of grammatical mistakes. Okay, a clean, that's what I call a clean presentation, clean grammar. Absolutely lovely. When you speak or when you write, no grammar mistake requirement for you to get a high score. And also, um, don't try to cram too much complex words and phrases when you speak or when you write. It will make your presentation look stiff, unnatural, and it will lower your score.
Yeah, I think that's a good point back, because sometimes a test taker wants to show all the words that they know, and sometimes it's not always appropriate. So unless you are very sure of how to use a word, I would maybe not even use it. And sometimes you don't really have to have long, difficult words. Just using words in a natural way is sufficient. The
Yes.
next question we have here is about reading. And the question is, during the reading, the matching task, where you have to match the heading to a passage, A, B, C, D, etc. This is a difficult task for some people. Do you have any tips to help someone who has difficulty with that?
Oh yes, matching is a. I'm not gonna lie. Matching is a very challenging type of multiple choice test, and especially the matching headings where you have to match the, the say the heading with the corresponding section of the reading. That one is so challenging because it requires you to read the whole thing, and actually not many learners, not many people have the focus or the stamina to read through the whole reading things. And if you are unlucky, that all 3 of the readings will have matching headings. It's very unlucky of you if you get that. But however, my tip is that don't try to cheat your way through the reading with matching keywords. It's not going to work. Yeah, the IELTS test, in recent years, I have seen an improvement in the test format that prevent test taker from matching only keywords. Yeah, you fall into trap. There are so many traps, you fall into them eventually.
I would say that we're not trying to trap people, but one of the ways that the reading test is designed is that it will use synonyms. It will use words that mean the same as in the question. So when you're looking for a keyword, if you're looking for a particular type of word, then also look for synonyms, words that mean the same, because that indicates that you actually understand what you are reading and that your level of English is superior. I'd just add one more thing, Lei, back, and that is that we have a test here, IELTS, that tries to assess everybody from 0 to 9. In other words, from someone who doesn't speak any English to someone who speaks perfect English. And that means the way the test is designed, there will be some questions that are for the band 9 person. And there will be
Yes.
some questions which are for the band 4 person or the band 3 question
Oh, I see.
person. So that means that if you find a very difficult question, don't worry. That question is for someone who is, a real
Yes.
expert. So if you
Yes.
can't answer that, that's okay, because
Yes.
there will be other questions you can answer, and that will be an indication of your level of English.
Thank you, Don.
There's another question here. This is from someone from India, and he or she is asking about resources uh, that are helpful for preparing for IELTS, um, and also how much time does it take to prepare for the test. Do you have anything to add to that, Beck?
Yes, so materials. So first of all, I would always recommend official books from Cambridge, from Oxford, from Pearson Longman. They are accredited um, publishers. So one of my favorite is a Cambridge IELTS series. There's a very long-standing series, and they have very high-quality tests. They're very lovely. Um, also, sorry, the Barons series is also very well beloved with test takers who want to prepare for the test. Um, there's also a series from. Give me a second. Excuse me for a second. I'll look for the name.
Mm.
Um,
But I agree. Cambridge designs the test, and I'll just mention that the IELTS test is owned by the University of Cambridge and by IDP, and also by the
yes,
British Council.
yes,
There are three owners of
yes,
the test, and the development of the test over the last 30 years has involved all of those partners. So if you find a book from Cambridge, you can be assured that it is a valid reflection of the test.
yes. And I would highly recommend that you try books from Miss Pauline Cullen. She is
Okay.
pretty famous in the IELTS community because she has co-written many books for the Cambridge IELTS test preparation series, and her insights
Okay.
are very valuable. I actually learned a lot from her, well, not directly, but from her articles and her books. She
Yeah.
actually wrote a very comprehensive book,
Yeah.
the IELTS, the key for success in IELTS test, where she debunked many myths and misconceptions regarding the test.
I would also add another person there, Claire McDowell. She was the
Oh,
senior examiner, the principal examiner in Australia for a long time, and
oh,
she has authored many books. And one which is quite useful is Step Up to IELTS, which is for lower level candidates. So that's something to consider as well. Um,
oh,
we we
yes.
have it. We have another question here. It's a general question about listening. How to improve your listening score in IELTS. So you did talk about uh, devoting some time having a schedule for listening. What sort of things do you listen to? What sort of skills are required to be good at listening, do you think?
Thank you, John. So first of all, you don't just listen to, a lot of people when they prepare for the listening skill, they only listen to the the listening test and nothing else. And I don't think that's a good thing because you need to listen to authentic English, like authentic materials, like conversations, presentation, talks, videos, audios on various topics to improve your overall listening comprehension capability. Okay, and with that also you combine with listening to the IELTS listening audio, so you are used to some of the accents and some of the way the speaker provide information when they speak. Okay,
Yeah,
combine the
that's
two.
right, Beck. Yeah. And I would add to that IELTS is the international English language testing system, and that means that you will hear a a lot of different international accents. You'll hear British accents, you'll hear Australian accents, New Zealand accents. You may even hear Irish accents. You'll definitely hear American accents.
Yes.
So if you are listening to things like public radio or podcasts, then make an effort to listen to someone maybe from the Voice of America for American accents, listening to the BBC for British accents, the ABC in Australia for Australian accents. All of those will help. And the other thing about the listening is that each part of the listening test is a bit different. So in the first part, two people talking. So listening to a conversation is useful. The second part of the test, one person giving some information. So in other words, someone giving instructions or something like that. The third part, 3 or 4 people talking, listening to things like that. And finally, lectures, which is probably the most difficult part of the listening test. And you can listen to lectures online all the time. There are many people who give lectures, TED Talks, things like that.
Yes.
So all of those are very useful for the listening test, I think.
Yes. And I would add that, Oxford and, Harvard, Stanford universities, they all have their 1 hour long full lectures for free on YouTube. I would highly recommend those.
Yeah. And would you recommend that someone listens to a lecture on a subject that they're interested in? Because that will, make them, that will stimulate them more.
So there are so many subjects, but some of the subjects that I have encountered quite frequently in the listening, first of all, would be science and the environment. They are quite popular. So there are a few YouTube channels on the topic, TED Talk in particular. Veritasium, it's very famous, like 10 of millions of subscribers. Okay, and I would, yes.
Now go on. What is that last one that you mentioned there? Maybe we can put that on our Facebook page.
Yeah, I'll show it to you on my screen. So this one is very famous, Veritasium, right here.
Okay.
I'll share my screen and you can see it.
Yeah, do that.
Here, Veritasium. 8 million subscribers, and the speaker is the videos are always long, like 10 minutes, so very high quality, and scientific languages mixed with normal everyday conversation. Very lovely, very well conducted videos, and he's a professor. He's very well educated.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much for that tip back. That's good. We have another question, and this is a question again about the listening test, and it's a question about whether you get 10 minutes to transfer your answers when you do the computer IELTS test. I know the answer to this question, but do you remember whether you did or not when you did the computer test?
10 minutes?
Yeah, well, in the paper test, you get 10 minutes to transfer your answers. But in the computer test, you do not.
Yes.
So this is an important thing to remember. If you are doing the computer test for the first time, don't expect to get 10 minutes to put your answers into the onto the screen. So we have some more questions. We are going through quite a few, which is great. There's a question about resources for test practice apart from IDP. I'll talk about the ones that are on IDP, and you might be able to suggest some other ones. But if you go to the IELTS.com website, you will find a lot of practice materials there. Can you add anything? I mean, we have already mentioned books by Cambridge and Oxford and other things. Is there anything else online that you would recommend in terms of practice tests?
Yeah, so I would recommend this site IELTS online test. Okay, so this one is a very long-standing website for IELTS test. And the thing I love about this website is that the test structure and interface is very similar to the computer delivered test. Very similar. But however, there's a little bit of downsides to this is that the difficulty level of the test can vary wildly. There's no like even like in the Cambridge is very well designed, but this test is a little bit more. You're not sure, maybe you hit the too difficult test or something like that. But overall, the quality is pretty good, and the number of tests you can take is very large. Okay, so you won't be afraid that you run out of things to do.
I should also mention that there is the IELTS progress check that you can do online, and it costs money, but you do get an indicative score in all parts of the test. So that is very useful, particularly for someone who is thinking, should I do the official test or not? Because it will give them an idea of what score they should expect to get. We have another question from Vishal in India, and I presume, and he is asking, how do I practice speaking when I am at home and probably not with other people who can speak English very well? So what would you suggest for that person?
Oof. So first of all, practice speaking at home when there's no good or of native speaker around you. I'm going to be honest, it can be challenging, but it's not impossible. So one of the technique that I recommend is that you record yourself. Okay, you just don't record your voice, record your entire face, make a video of you speaking. Okay, so you can watch the video again and maybe spot some mistakes, or you can show the video to an expert, a teacher, instructor, and they can help you point out the areas for improvement. And also, if you don't know what to say, so when you practice at home and you say a topic, you don't know what to say, so look for examples or model speaking speeches, okay, and you can model after them. You repeat after them, shadow them. But I would recommend that find an instructor, find a teacher to a native teacher to help you. That would be best. You can go online.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. The idea of shadowing, imitation. That's a very good idea. We have another question about in the reading and the listening, whether a person, and this is in the, I presume in the paper and pencil test, but probably also in the computer test, can you use uppercase or should you use lowercase when answering the questions in the reading and the listening? I know the answer to this question, and I'll answer it, but you might want to add something. It doesn't matter.
So, yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can use uppercase or lowercase in your answers. Is that your experience?
Yes, I don't stress the importance of upper or lowercase. I stress the importance that write so other people can read what you're writing. Don't write too ugly.
That's right. I think that is crucial.
If your handwriting is bad, take the computer test.
Yes, that's right. The other important thing to say is that spelling is important.
Yes.
In the listening and the reading, if you don't spell an answer correctly, then that will be marked as wrong. So be very careful with your spelling. Another question here that we have, let me look. There was a question here about the true, false, and not given type of question in reading.
Okay.
This person actually has two questions. Tips for general training writing, task 2. And is there a particular structure for that? And in addition, do we have a strategy for yes, no, and not given? I can let me answer the first question. You can think
Yes.
about the true, false, and not given one, but
Yes.
with the general training and academic task 2 are really the same. The assessment criteria are exactly the same. So the examiner will assess a general training task 2 in the same way as they assess an academic task 2. The only difference is that maybe the general training task 2 is a rather simpler, less academic topic. But this, if you look at the public assessment criteria, and you can find them on IELTS.com, then you'll see that the 4 criteria for task 2 are exactly the same for academic and general training. Is there a particular structure? Well, for 250 words, I recommend about 5 paragraphs with an introduction and a conclusion. Maybe 4 is okay, but probably 6 is too many. 7 is definitely too many. 2 is not enough. Okay, that's as much as I would say about structure. And Back, do you have any advice about true, false, and not given, or yes, no, and not given question?
Yes. So true false not given is a yet another challenging task that you must do, and usually people are more used to true and false. Not given is another option that often confound people, confuse the test taker. So I would give very briefly advice, and I would show you an article that explore deeply into how to do the true false not given. So first of all, you need to understand the question first.
Mm.
Okay, understand the statement, and then you must be able to find the paragraph that contains the relevant information connected to the statement. Okay, so now if it's true, that means you can find the information in the reading and it agrees with the statement. Okay, now if it's false, that you can find the information exists, okay, but it disagrees or say otherwise or contradict, okay, with the statement. Now this is very important. If you cannot find the information, you only find like a little traces, a little bit of words that look similar, okay, and you try really hard to find, and that probably means it's not given. It's not going to be there. Okay, don't try to find something that is not there.
Yeah, that's very good advice. And I'd also mention that you have 40 questions to answer in only 60 minutes. So if you do spend 5 minutes on one question, that's not a very good use of time. So I would leave that difficult question, and you may find the answer while you're looking for the answer of another question. So using your time efficiently is a very important part of reading, I think. We have another question here from Hitai, and he or she is asking, well, how do you get a 6 in your reading? Because every time I do it, I get a 5.5. I miss out. And we've already talked a little bit about how to improve your reading, but a couple of things occur to me. Are you spelling your answers correctly? Because if you make a couple of spelling errors, then this may stop you getting your band 6. Have you answered every question? Sometimes people leave some questions unanswered. It's better to guess, true, 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 because then you might get a couple of those correct. So there are a couple of ideas. Be very careful to check that you've spelt correctly. Be careful if it's a pencil and paper test, to be careful that you have written clearly, and also make sure that you answer all the questions. Is there anything else you would add to that, Back?
Actually, that's a very comprehensive tip from you, Don. I would only add that if you want to get a 6, then you need to answer 23 to 26 questions correct. Okay, so make sure that half of, at least half of all of your questions are correct. Read and double check again. That's all I need to add. Aside from Don's very good tip.
Okay. We don't have much time left for questions. Maybe one or two more questions before we leave. One person asks, is it possible to get a high score on your first attempt at the test? Now, you tried twice. I won't ask you what score you got the first time, but do you think it is possible to just prepare, do the test, and get the score that you want? Yes or
Yes,
no?
it is absolutely possible to be prepared and get the high score on first try. Actually, on my first try, my listening, I got 9 on listening and 8.5 on reading. Okay, and actually the second time, I think I got older because my listening got down to 8.5.
Yes, okay.
It is completely possible.
Yes, okay. And the last question, we're going to finish after this question. If we haven't answered your questions, then please put them on Facebook because we will get around to answering them. And you'll find answers to many other questions on Facebook as well. But this question is, how do I stay calm during the speaking test? Now, this is I don't know if you're a psychologist, Bach, but what advice would you give?
Okay, so this actually is a very big problem with so many of my learners. Is that when I see the, examiner, I'm scared. Sometimes the examiner are so serious, and they panic. It's true.
Yes.
So my first advice that you want to be comfortable when you enter the classroom. Then one of the best way, not the only way, one of the best way would be to put yourself in the pressure. Make yourself acclimatize yourself with the test pressure. Okay, put a timer. Okay, have a teacher that give you the feel of the actual test, and keep on practicing that. So your mind is used to the pressure and seeing a completely new stranger ask you English questions.
Can I add? I know a lot of examiners, and none of them have ever killed anybody. They're all quite friendly people.
Yes.
And in fact, I know examiners really do want a test taker to do well. And so the examiner is asked not to be too friendly and to laugh and to say things, but they do really want the test taker to perform well. So don't be afraid of the examiner because they are actually on your side. I've just got one more question has just come up, which I think I can answer, but you might like to add something back. This person got 6 for speaking, and they didn't know the meaning of a word, and they just guessed. I would suggest that this person actually ask the examiner, not always, maybe once or twice, what do you mean by that word? Or can you explain that? If you do that in the speaking test, then the examiner will explain it to you. But make sure that you ask that question with good grammar. Don't say, oh, what mean that? Because that's bad grammar. Ask, I'm sorry, could you explain that word to me? Now that is very good grammar. And that is telling the examiner that in fact your English isn't bad. Would you like to add anything to that, Beck? And this is our last answer, okay?
Yes. So I'll just add a little bit that aside from asking with good grammar, be confident when asking that question. Okay, don't fidget.
Yes.
It happens to a lot of people.
Right.
What's the meaning of this one? Be confident and ask calmly, slowly. Could you please explain the meaning?
That's good advice. All right. Well, thank you very much, Beck. That has been fascinating, and I'm sure it's been very useful to everybody who's been listening. And I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank everybody who has attended this session. And I'm going to finish it now, unless Sam wants to step in and do something, or one of my other colleagues. But I don't think they want to. They're probably busy doing something else. All right. Back. I hope to see you again, maybe on Zoom, or else maybe when I get to Vietnam next. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, John, and thank you, IDP, everyone, for making this webinar happen. And I'm really glad, I'm really happy I can be here and share the knowledge. And once again, representing the teachers and the instructor, the test takers. And I hope that everyone can find something useful from the webinars, and I hope to see John again in future
Okay.
talks, in future Zooms like this. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Beck.
very
We'll
much.
see you next time. Bye bye, everybody.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.